So if you wanted to make a larger project,
then I think on from that point.
90 minutes, or what were you thinking of?
I'm not thinking in tempo.
But it'd be an extension, I imagine, of its, now let's say you've gone into opera, into the visual field dominantly.
It'd be an extension to film.
Right? Is that it?
Of the possibility of setting the material in flux. The advantage of the use of chance operations is that you can then use all the material that you make rather than being confronted with a conventional film problem, which is that you have to edit.
Right.
If you remove the editing in the sense of making judgments, because with the chance operations you omit the judgment. That way you don't waste any film.
Right.
You can use it all. What I propose to do, Henning, is leave the television studio or wherever the film is made empty, but to keep the lights that are ordinarily in a television studio present at the roof,
yes,
or at the ceiling, but also to have lights on available that can be on the floor or at other points.
So in all
so that
spatial dimensions.
So that the film actually will be about the effective light.
Super.
And on an empty room. But no room is actually empty. A light will actually begin to show what there is in it. And the light's in interaction.
Very good.
And it is, of course, very productive of shadows. And they're all of that space and light will be used directed by means of chance operations. It's very curious. What has interested me very much, both in sound and sight, graphic arts and music and so forth, is to experience each sound or each thing we see as itself, rather than as representative of something else, so that when we look, even as we do at two things that we think are identical, if we actually look at them, we see that they're not. The reason they're not is that each thing is itself at its own center, and that center is a center with respect to everything else. So that light, for instance, falls on each Coca-Cola bottle differently. So that if you look at each Coca-Cola bottle with light in mind, you'll see that they're entirely different.
The first tour of the studio. In this film, the dimensions of the studio provide the framework for the scope of the activities determined in the script. This film, by auteur John Cage, was shot as 35mm black and white in April 1992 at the FSM in Munich. Henning Lohner was the executive producer and director. The light and composition of the edit plan was developed by John Cage and prepared on the computer together with Andrew Culver. Van Carlson, triple Emmy Award-winning cameraman from Los Angeles, joins the team. His participation explains the title of the film. 111 means that this film is John Cage's 11th piece for one performer, here for the first time a cameraman, since Cage introduced this kind of numbering system for his works. We experience the first moment of the very first scene of the film, composed using chance operations, which Cage performed with the help of the Chinese I Ching, the Book of Changes. John Cage, New York composer, writer, and painter of international reputation, left a strong mark on the art of the 20th century, like few others. Now, Cage has expanded his artistic work for the first time to the medium of the feature film. Through his compositional style, in particular his use of chance operations, traditional categories of filmmaking, including script, direction, and editing, are blended into a novel filmic unity. Up to now, the computer in New York could only simulate the studio space in Munich. Now it is put to the test. The feature film 111 by John Cage is a film without a subject. Movements of light in an empty room are observed as they are performed by a camera person. There are, with the exception of the subjective camera, no performers. In this film, everything is composed. The movements of the light, the movements, lens angles, and fades of the camera, the editing, and the form of the film.
This is, so to speak, an empty room in which the light is not in relation to anything but itself. And it reminds me of what Immanuel Kant, in his critique of, I think it's the critique of judgment, said about music and about laughter. That is, without meaning anything, both music and laughter, and I think we can say now light too, they give pleasure without having any meaning whatsoever. It's through their changes, the changes that take place with sounds, and the changes that take place in the sound of laughter, and the changes that take place in intensity, and differences between light and dark. Noticing such things, one is free of the problems of politics and economics, I think. Even perhaps free of oneself.
Da oben. Ja, 3,50 Meter ungefähr.
Up to 168 lights and their floodlight effects are newly adjusted for each scene of the film. For every source of light, for every movement of the light and of the camera, or later for the editing and musical composition, Cage devises an action strategy which is first translated into number values, groups, chains, and constellations of numbers with the aid of a computer program. These numbers then produce dynamic performance values for the programming and the movement of the single lights, for the orchestra composition, which Cage composed specifically for the film, and for all the other aspects which make up the film. The conversion from the computer into the real world is, however, fashioned by the hand of man. Each light is suspended precisely according to the indication in the script, determining the light's angle of inclination and their degree of diffusion in the studio.
Lassen wir ihn so?
Ja.
Okay.
Kannst du vielleicht so machen, dass man nicht diese newtonischen Ringe
Ja, warte mal, dann muss ich das anders
in die andere Richtung. Ja, so ist viel schöner schon, ja.
Okay.
Gut.
Chance operations are very important in Cage's compositional style. They also form the basis of his new feature film. Through the incorporation of chance into the creative process, the composer is, so to speak, automatically freed from his all too personal preferences and idiosyncrasies. With Cage, however, the use of chance is not arbitrary. The principles of chance do not appear with uncontrolled quasi-chaotic randomness. A choice is made from the infinity of existing possibilities. The value of the materials used and their specific meaning for the creative process is defined and acknowledged by these choices. The Book of Changes, the Chinese I Ching, is a well-known example for this procedure, and it is of great importance in the understanding of Cage's works. The feature film 111 also originated with the aid of chance operations based on the I Ching.
So, 21, 22 und 27 und die anderen.
While the lights inside the studio are adjusted, work continues simultaneously in various places outside of the actual film studio. Under the roof of the studio is one of the two control centers for the project. The course of the shooting is determined first through the light control equipment, in which the number values provided by the performance score, the script, are fed in. With the aid of this device, all the movements of the lights are controlled. Only when all the intensity values for each scene are entered can the rehearsal on the surface of the stage downstairs and the recording take place.
22, 66,
66,
27, 69,
No, I have no idea.
67,
28,
Right on.
38,
28,
038,
38,
30, 25,
30, 25,
33, 31,
31,
39, 74,
74,
41, 53.
53.
On the other end of the studio wing is the MOS room, Magnetic Tape Recording Electronics Studio, which gives the procedures their beat or time code, the counting units in minutes, seconds, and single frames according to the score which was fed in. The recording will only be accurate if the clock keeps perfect time in relation to the sequence of the pictures.
We're getting into heavy shadow trouble here. He won't have the problems if they could stay above this light. Okay, Also wenn wir erst noch länger oben bleiben und dann in die Mitte erst später reingehen, dann geht es. Okay. Gut, okay. Mats, nochmal auf Start für noch eine Probe, bitte.
Die Maske der Raumverbindung ist da wieder klar.
10 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, go. It's very nice. Ja, Heinz, das kannst du genauso machen. Das war wunderbar.
Communication is primarily accomplished via microphone. The instructions are gathered by the director, who coordinates the complete sequence of events, negotiating between author, cameraman, and the different branches of technical assistance.
Die Mats hört.
Ja, ist alles in Ordnung soweit. Gerd, du hörst mich über mein Hausmikro hier nicht, ne? Doch. Hörst du mich jetzt? Ah, okay, prima. Gut, dann machen wir. So, we're gonna take this.
Moment,
Also ich,
der Gerd kommt nochmal.
ich springe mit dem ersten rein, dann überblende ich 2 und 3 und den 6er.
Ja. 2 und 3 und den 6er, ganz genau. Und dann nach 6 kommen 7 und 8, die sind beide 3 Sekunden lang, nicht eine. Also alles einfach prinzipiell möglichst weich.
But we'll change the lens so that way we can have an idea of what the lens sees while we watch it. I think that would be the better way to do it. We'll change the lens, move it to a proximal location, and then have a sense of what it does.
Okay.
All right, gates clean.
Every movement, every shot is notated in the score and determined in the form of various reference systems, cross-checked again and again. The cameraman, camera assistant, director, and of course the author, John Cage, take their individual notes about the course of the shooting. These notes are then closely reviewed in the joint discussions. Conventional film banalities, such as checking the camera in the process of making a normal feature film, become crucial here in order to ensure that the exact realization of the script and score takes place. Even the execution of the most common optical connection becomes a ritual of technical concern.
Oh, you want to check the cues?
The rehearsal takes place after the adjustment of the lights, the programming of the movements of the lights, the adjustment of the camera. After much preparation, the Moz room is getting the desired red digital signals. The red key shows the electronic time code, which now has to be followed. Now we have a 75-second take, which is rehearsed with the crane. The gentle hand of the crane operator is of great importance for the steady camera work. Heinz Huber, the crane operator, has over 30 years of experience.
Okay. Und für die Probe ab, sobald du soweit bist. Okay. 10. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. This is a 75-second take. And it is take 6, 7. Now we have 60 seconds left. 60 Sekunden noch. Ja. Ah ja, du kannst ja sehen, genau. "45 seconds. Just a little less than 30 seconds. 20 seconds.
After the rehearsal of film scene 13, there are again discussions of the parameters of the performance. Occasionally, there are changes being made in the script, or different solutions present themselves suddenly. For these cases, John Cage always has his chance operations ready, through which a further course is determined, or through which a proposal of a solution for an existing problem is made. At the same time, the director checks the course of actions according to the script and score, and the camera assistant checks it according to the given materials.
Okay? Gut. So, das war Szene 13. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
A section of a scene called a take is being filmed. John Cage's feature film without a subject is being shot for the first time. The total duration of the finished film will be 90 minutes, divided into 17 scenes, which are themselves divided into takes. The considerable noises of the camera don't actually matter because the film is recorded silently. The music is added to the film only after its completion.
Seconds, less than 60 seconds. Jetzt haben wir noch 30 Sekunden rein. Ja, ich sag dir die Zehner an, ja? Jetzt kommen gleich 15 Sekunden noch. Oh ja, was soll's nicht. 10. 3, 2, 1, 0 and cut. Da hätte ich dir eventuell ein bisschen mehr Zeit ansagen sollen, ne? Ja. Naja, das mache ich nächstes Mal.
Vielleicht geht's. Gut.
Okay. So, jetzt gehen wir zum Take 3. Das ist bei 56 Minuten 35 Sekunden geht's rein. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
This is the same section of the scene. Here it is viewed through the eye of the camera as it records the scene. This is called video mirroring, and it is another means to control the process of recording as precisely as possible.
So, noch 30 Sekunden, Heinz. Ten seconds. Four, 3, 2, 1, 0 and cut. Okay? Great. Gut, prima, toll, danke. Other than that I ask you to do it, is there any particular reason why you would like to make a film?
Well, I'm getting rather old, so that if I have the opportunity to do something, I jump at it instead of hesitating, because there isn't much time left.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
A further section of a scene is being filmed. This procedure is repeated all in all 91 times in the course of 10 days of shooting to produce the complete raw material for the editing to follow. John Cage is very concerned about wasting as little film as possible, and thus, at the end of the shooting, there is the astonishing shooting ratio of 1 to 1.4. For a total length of the film of about 2,800 meters, only 600 meters of additional film was shot and could not be used. This material was used for the opening credits of the film, so that it would not be wasted.
Six, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and cut.
For this composition, we have, if I recall correctly, we have 17 scenes. It's about the number of chapters in Finnegan's Wake or Ulysses. When you have a large work, it's better to divide it into parts, like of that number, rather than say 3, because 3 parts would produce very long sections. In this case, dividing 90 minutes into 17 sections, we have both the experience of what seems to be long and what seems to be short. And we have, we're carried through the 90 minutes with differences of light, differences of numbers of lights. I look forward to the pleasure of seeing a film that doesn't have a plot, or doesn't have characters, which has, so to speak, nothing. And that gives us, I think, in this day of violence and overpopulation, war, and economic collapse, I think it gives us something to enjoy.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
For over half a century, John Cage, born in 1912 in Los Angeles, living in New York, constantly and decisively influenced and transcended the contemporary artistic landscape, also exploring the concept of anarchy. He unintentionally became one of the most prolific composers, writers, and visual artists of the 20th century.
20 seconds.
It's going to have a 0 intensity of 20 rather than really 0. And a minimum it goes to a 40. And I'll make scene 17, the last scene. Okay? All right. It's very fast. Oh, what's that, a problem? It's finished. That's all the scene. Now I must combine the parts into the score. Partitura. Partitura. All right, here we go. Finished. Okay?
Right.
That means the last event is at 1 hour, 29 minutes, and 56 seconds. Okay?
All right.
And that in scene 17, there were 60 different, we call it, I know the word, Speicherplatz. 16 Speicherplatz. Auf 10, what is it? 7? 17. No, 17.
17.
17. Okay. Now it's finished, and I can go over here and print it. Line that up. Turn it on. Copy. 111.17 light cues to the printer. So now you see that at 1 hour, 27 minutes, and 15 seconds, all of these circuit numbers will change to these intensities. So circuit number 1 will move to an intensity of 50. At the same time, circuit number 3 will be moving to an intensity of 24, and so on. And this change begins at this time, and it has a duration of 2 seconds, so it's finished 2 seconds later. And so 2 seconds after 15, at 17, begins the next change, and so on. And that's how we did it. So there were 17 scenes, about 1,200 changes approximately, and about 20 lights changing in each of these 1,200 changes. So it's a lot of activity.
John Cage always understood how he could, through the introduction of unpredictable situations, transcend the boundaries of the respective art realm in which he moved. Cage dedicated his life to the forgotten, ordinary, and everyday sounds and phenomena. He said, "I enjoy everything I hear," and wanted to help the noises and things generally not considered to be music or art attain, as he put it, artistic honor. This is now also true for light.
10. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and out. Cut. Thanks.
Great.
Danke.
That was a good one.
I think light is gives me the pleasure that sound gives.
Well, it always, of course, I think because of your references to Joyce about the ineluctable modality.
Isn't that marvelous? I was trying to think of what those words are.
Yeah.
And I don't have my copy of Ulysses with me, but the
ineluctable modality of the visible.
Of the visible, isn't it marvelous? And then in the next paragraph, of the audible.
Audible, yeah.
And that's how we live together, I would say, in society. We live with light, and we live with sound. We live with what we see, and we live with what we hear.
Good.
Good.
And it has all I do is
They're mostly empty words.
John Cage, Schoenberg student, friend of Duchamp, and admirer of Joyce, was throughout his life preoccupied with interdisciplinary questions in art. This is also reflected in his over 30-year-long collaboration with choreographer Merce Cunningham, in pieces such as Music Circus, Theatre Piece, and in his operas Europeras 1 through 5. 111, John Cage's last evening-length work, has now been realized.
I've admired your way of using the camera,
Oh, thanks.
either when it's on a tripod or whether it's. Is this would you call this a tripod?
Yeah, it's a very heavy.
It's a tripod without legs.
Yeah, a very heavy tripod that comes from California.
Oh, you didn't bring this whole.
No, they had them here. But,
oh, but you mean the idea comes from?
oh no, actually, I think it was made in California.
For the movies?
Yeah.
Isn't that marvelous?
Yeah. But the cameras are from
California.
right here in Munich.
Oh.
Yeah. But this has the crane has a certain graceful
Yes, it does.
quality to it.
Yes, it reminds me of a gondola.
Yeah.
So Van,
John, can you explain to us what we see here before us?
This paper has been smoked, has suffered the effects of fire and of water, so that the marks of both water and fire remain visible on it. These are flecks of burned material that could have been removed by floating the whole sheet in a pool of water. Mm-hmm. And then they could have been released from the paper. But it was my thought to keep the dark block. And so in certain cases, they were made to adhere to the paper rather than leave it. Mm-hmm. Some of them may leave as time goes on, but most of them will remain.
More pictures? Yeah. Everybody looking.
If you can see the camera, it can see you.
Yes.
Okay? Ready? Good?
All right. So, you want?
Thank you.
At almost the same time, in the post-production facility, the material for the editing of the film is already being prepared immediately after the completion of the shooting in New York and Munich.
You're satisfied,
We haven't seen anything but what are called the rushes. It hasn't been edited. It isn't in relation to the music. It hasn't been given the shape of the time brackets. Mm-hmm. So it isn't anything yet that I can say anything about, any more than I would say about the sky, if you want me to talk about the sky.
On June 12, 1992, 2 months to a day before his death, the feature film without a subject for one performer was completed by John Cage in collaboration with the editor Bernardine Kolisch in New York. The extravagant editing also followed a completely composed performance score, realized with the aid of Cage's chance operations. This editing process required up to 4 fades, superimpositions of film, and simultaneously, among other things, film scenes played in reverse motion. The accurate control of the realization was maintained with the aid of the precise electronic timecode, which ran for every film layer. And here are a few pages from the script from which the film was realized. In the year of his 80th birthday, concerts, lectures, festivals, celebrations in honor of John Cage took place around the world. But in this birthday year, John Cage himself only wanted to realize one large-scale project, the feature film One11 with the music 103.